My name is Shannon Hutchison and my pronouns are she, her, and I am doing a video series around labels. And the reason that I started this was because I am part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and I struggled for a long time to come out. What really held me back from wanting to come out was that I was scared that I would be defined by that label. But after I came out, I started to have deeper conversations with people around labels and how they are impacting them and how it's impacted them, and really wanting us to move the world together. So I think a way we can do that is through stories and through understanding.
My name is Chaz and I'm on a journey for self-love.
It's beautiful. What are some labels that have been obstacles for you within your life?
I think being gay definitely is a huge one for me. There was bullying that came with it, right? There was like comments, you know, why do you walk like a girl? Why do you talk like a girl? I had a supervisor who was, I'd like to consider him as a mentor, because he kind of really helped me dig down deep inside and uncover and unbox a lot of things that I was carrying around. One of them being that he told me, like, you know, you're slightly homophobic. And I was like, how can a gay man be slightly homophobic? I was like, that doesn't make sense, you know? And he said, because when I see you and you look at, you know, guys that are more feminine than you are, you have this slight judgment towards it. And he was like, and I think that stems from your childhood. And that made me realize those comments that I received back then and the bullying made me hate what I was back then, you know,
Right.
The way that I walked, the way that I talked, which led me to changing myself and becoming more masculine just to fit in with society, you know, because that's what society wanted at the time. So today I still carry that with me. Every day it's a struggle because I'm not being true to myself, you know, and I've learned that with being in therapy, that if I continue to live the way that I do and not being true to myself and loving who I'm supposed to be,
Right.
it's just going to be a huge struggle and a huge obstacle and a barrier that I can't bring myself to overcome, just because I continue to live that little kid, you know, still afraid to be who they are because of what he's experienced.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So it's I'm trying to work on it. It's still a little bit hard. I'm not sure maybe it's the fear of being judged again.
Right.
And receiving those comments again. I was at Stampede with some friends, and my one friend, she's like, Chaz, why do you walk like that? Now I definitely know that I can't hit on you because you're obviously gay because of the way you walk. And the younger me would have been so affected by that and bothered.
Right.
But me now, knowing who I am and who I'm supposed to be and where I'm trying to get to, was kind of like, I embraced it. That reassured me that I'm doing the right thing and finding my true self.
Right.
And not hiding all the time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Younger me would have been like hid under a rock because she pointed that out. But
Right.
me now, I'm like, it was just, it brought a good feeling inside. I was like, okay, well, I'm walking more confidently in the way that the younger me wanted to, but changed over time because of the trauma I experienced, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because that comment can be taken so many different ways, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And for you to get behind yourself and say, but this is who I am, so thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess with that, like, when it comes to labels and to being gay, like, what assumptions do you think are tied with people who are gay? And how does that change culturally too?
We interviewed an Indigenous drag queen out in Vamp for the Changemaker Awards that we're having.
Okay.
And one thing that she mentioned is a lot of people tend to look at, you know, the gay community as like sexual, but that's not who we are.
Right.
And what she is trying to do is break down that that barrier. Our intention is to teach these kids that being true to yourself and having fun with it, and not just being another me and hiding, who you really are all your life, because it's not fun. You know what I mean? It's very hard. It's a huge struggle, but I'm learning as I go, and the more that I acknowledge that, and again, if I keep walking the way that I should and talking the way that I should, I think I'll be okay. Even hearing my family, make comments about me being gay, it brings me, like, again, that good feeling, because the younger me was always hiding that part, right? And there was always like the assumption that I wasn't, but I remember growing up and me and my sister would like dress up in her clothes and just have fun, right? Me now, or I guess not me now, but like in previous years I couldn't, because back when I was a kid that was wrong,
right?
But in today's society there's more light to it, you know what I mean? You see it on television, you see it on ads, you see it in music videos. People are being more open about it, people are coming out, because I feel like that exposure is just helping society be more okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
there's a couple things I thought of when you were talking. Was I was a teacher, an elementary school teacher for a long time, but we had the GSA for the past, like the last 2 years that I was there. And at first it was the Gay Straight Alliance, and then it turned to the gender sexuality. I hated that the term sexuality was in there. And the reason I did was because then parents, and I totally understand why, like I get it, I'm not changing that.
Yeah.
But the thing that parents heard was sex.
Yeah.
Right away, right? And I'm like, this isn't like, at elementary school, it is about understanding that there are all different kinds of families and there's all different kinds of love, and it is about love. And at that stage for any kid, it's not about sex. And so, I don't even know how we remove that from people's minds who don't understand that it's about love, right? And of course, sex is a component later on.
Yeah.
But at the young age, that's not what we're teaching them, we're talking to them about. It's like, allowing you to step into a space to be who you are. But the other thing that really interests me with labels is how they can change through time.
With our people before colonialism, we looked at two-spirited individuals as very sacred and very powerful. And one thing that I learned with that interview with that Indigenous drag queen is, she mentioned that we were front of the line when it came to battles.
Right.
One thing that I did also here again was, if you shame, two-spirit people, gay, lesbian, bisexual, you're letting colonization win, because we didn't talk down on these two-spirited people. We talked them up,
Right.
because of just their label itself was just so powerful,
Right.
and it wasn't something to be ashamed of. As a Indigenous person, I would like to understand it more and bring light to it. Do you know what I mean? Especially for Indigenous people today who are struggling to come out, because two-spirit people were looked at as these powerful people, so your child or your grandchild or nephew, niece can, be happy with who they truly are as an Indigenous two-spirited person.
Yeah, it's powerful. And it's just so fascinating to me how society and culture can mold it so much that becomes the truth, but it's not the truth, right? It's inspiring. The fact that I'm like, there's cultures that really lift this up. So why is what we're living in today not doing that, right? Especially with the trans community right now too. It's
totally
really hard. Can you talk me kind of through the journey of becoming more comfortable with who you are?
I'm still in the process of being comfortable with myself and just loving myself more. you know, and I feel like that's one thing that I do struggle with is self-love.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I took on the whole therapy journey, was to just,
Totally.
you know, help me and to better myself in ways that I know that I'm struggling with. And it's been beneficial. You know, therapy can be intimidating. A lot of people are ashamed to admit that they're in therapy, but I'm one of those people that it's like, well, I kind of compare it to like your physical health when you're talking about your mental health. Like,
Yeah.
why would you say, or why would you be ashamed to say I go to the gym? You know, therapy's bettering your mental health. You go to the gym to better your physical health. You know, so I feel like that whole concept or stigma needs to kind of be broken down, and just, you know, you're bettering yourself essentially.
I'm a big lover of counseling, any therapy.
Yeah.
I've been doing it forever, but it's hard work. But it also is so much better than staying like quiet and.
But maybe that's something that, you know, this whole conversation can shed a little bit of light on, is, you know, just loving yourself and being true to yourself, and don't carry on hiding who you truly are, because you're just going to remain miserable and unattached to your true self. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so much effort. Right?
Yeah.
So much
It's
effort.
exhausting. Mentally, it's so exhausting.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm better now, today, than I was. You know, I go to drag shows. I love watching people perform and just be themselves, because, you know, that little kid inside wishes that they could be that person.
Totally. I think you hit on such a good point. And I took photos of people for a while and did this campaign, but I asked them questions. And one of it was like, you're pretending you're walking down the street and you see somebody. And one of the questions was, when you pass by, I hope you see, and I want you to know. So the second one, Etienne, who wears heels and gets looked at a lot, Etienne said, I want you to know, I can't get the wording right, but the wording was, this isn't a call for attention. It is me not fitting in the box you want, that you're trying to shove me into. And I was like, that's so fascinating, because we had a conversation about it, that I do think a lot of times people who are trying to shove themselves into a box and not allowing themselves out of the box, a lot of times then you do get jealous, or like you have a physical reaction to seeing somebody being different, because you're like, I am trying so hard to fit into what society wants me to be, and look at me, I'm doing a good job. And then you're over there, like just being yourself.
Exactly. I have put myself in this box just to make society happy, that I forgot about my own happiness, you know? So if I continue to stay in this box and wearing this mask, I'm making people on the outside happy, because I'm hiding who I truly am.
Right.
But within my own self, I'm always going to remain unhappy. So I feel like it's very important, you know, for myself and others who may face the same struggle, just to understand that and realize that, you know, it's truly is exhausting, and just be who yourself and love who you are, you know. And being the younger me may be slightly different from who I am today. I may not walk and talk exactly how I once did, but, you know, that just comes with growing up and learning and witnessing and seeing a lot. And, you know, being gay and Indigenous, again, you suffer from the racism, and then it's like the bad of being gay, you know, how it's wrong, and how you're not supposed to be that way, you're not supposed to walk that way, talk that way, you know. It's so I guess I can say I've experienced both ends.
Right.
But I want to say more so bullying and such came from being gay than Indigenous.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure why. Maybe some people can argue that they've experienced both, and But yeah, for me, it's just more so being gay rather than Indigenous, which I want to say I'm thankful for,
Right.
because it wasn't both heavy. It was just one side that was more heavy than the other.
Right.
I'm still kind of like blown away when people talk about the racism that they've experienced, and I'm like, well, I haven't experienced that, but maybe it's just more so I've become numb to the point where when it's happening, I don't know it's happening.
Right.
And maybe that's just because the younger me would try to ignore it and block it out, and learn to basically become numb and just be like, you can't control what people say. You can only control what you say about yourself.
Right. You became very good at that.
Yeah.
Very equipped at it. Yeah. So when it comes to like allies, what would you want them to know? How can they step in? What can they do?
I remember Halloween, I was like doing this like vampire look with like makeup, and my sister's like, yeah, that looks so good. You know what I mean? So just comments like that. That's a huge thing, especially for somebody who struggles to be true to themselves and want to wear and do things that the younger version of them wanted to, but was shamed for it. Before, I would quickly go in my room, put on my foundation, and hide it from my family so they didn't know that I was wearing makeup.
Okay.
But now it's like I have my door wide open. They'll come in. They'll even ask me, oh, how long is it going to take you to do your makeup? And so that's like, again, it's a reassuring part, and just like them being okay with me doing these things rather than hiding it like I used to.
Right.
So those reassuring comments from them just help. So
I almost like, I've heard you say a couple things through it, and it almost seems like the acknowledgement of who you are and like seeing you for who you are. Those comments have like really stuck with you.
Yeah, totally.
So anytime anyone's pointed something out, you're like, yeah, I'm being seen. Am I being seen for who I am?
Unfortunately, there's people who grew up in a household where it's not accepted, and they've been kicked out, or they've been disowned. Unfortunately, I have a huge soft spot, I guess, for those people.
Right.
If I were to ever like run my own business or an organization, it would be for those people who have experienced being kicked out, or for being gay, just
rejection.
Yeah, the rejection.
Worse.
And I love those people who wear those like free hug shirts at pride parades.
Yeah.
Because some people they never grew up with that love, and so being somebody who can provide even something as simple as a hug is like huge. These males didn't grow up with that love, something again as simple as a hug.
A big thing for me was looking for who was safe, and the way people showed me they were safe was they used language that was safe. They didn't make gay jokes. They didn't say that's gay, or and when they even talked, like for some people they would talk about like, oh, they have a sister who's a lesbian, and they were just talking about her in a very normal way, like, oh, my sister's partner, and then I figured it out, and I'm like, okay, there's a safe person to go to. And I think sometimes people don't understand the impact that jokes can have, I guess, like to signaling that you're not a safe person to go to.
Yeah.
I don't know, for me that was like a really big one, was the language piece.
Yeah, totally.
And like you were saying, people who show up to events, they show up to the Pride Parade, and suddenly you're like, oh, they're putting in that effort. They're wearing a hug shirt.
Yeah.
And they're a safe person to go to. Also, they're making an impact, even though they might not even know at the time. Some
people are just looking for that safe place.
Yeah.
And being somebody who can provide that is just huge, and it may trigger something inside, but just be open and continue to be that person with open arms, and just share the love that you have to offer.
If you were to go back and tell your little self anything, what advice would you give little you?
The advice that I would give little me is that it's okay. Don't put yourself in the box that society wants you to be in. Be you. Don't be afraid you know, walk how you want, talk how you want, and you're gonna grow up and ultimately be happier with who yourself and who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because no, a box is no place for somebody to hide for the rest of their life. So
I like that.
yeah.
I think too, sometimes people like question like, well, why do you have to be yourself, and why do you, and I think people don't understand that when you're trying to fit in this box that you don't fit in, you're actually hurting people around you too, because you're not bringing joy, you're not bringing happiness, you're bringing such a different energy, versus when you release that and can be who you are, you can do good in the world, you can help people, you can bring joy, you can bring happiness.
And maybe that'll be an inspiration and a light, a path for other people, and so they don't have to face this dark journey alone, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah.
Love it. Thanks, Chaz. That was awesome.
Thank you for this. This was amazing.
The big reason that we're wanting to do this is I think a lot of times people want to help. I like to think that people have good hearts. They want to help and they want to understand people, but they don't know how to take that step, don't know how to be an ally, they don't know what questions to ask, what questions not to ask. And I'm hoping like through this series that people are able to watch it and maybe take that next step.